This episode contains spoilers for the game Sifu. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cinephile Gamers Podcast. I am your host, Bo Smith, and we are going to be doing something on this episode that is brand and completely new, and that is review a video game. Yes! We are going to be covering a video game on the self-titled Cinephile Gamers Podcast. Can you believe it? And we're like 7 episodes in. Who knew? And Matthew, I know you're listening to this. Told you I would get to it eventually, and here it is. We are going to be reviewing Sifu. Now, Sifu is developed by Slow Clap Studios and was released for the PlayStation 4 and 5 as well as PC back in February of 2022. It's an action beat-em-up style game with a lot of love and fan service for martial arts inspired games and movies, and it really shows in this video game as well. So let me jump into the main plot of this video game. It is set in modern-day China. You start the game as a man named Yang with a group of 4 martial artists known as Fajar, who's the botanist, Shan, the fighter, Kuroki, the artist, and Jin Feng, the CEO. And you go through a martial arts dojo and defeat these people there. And afterwards, you confront the school's Sifu. And Sifu is basically meaning master or teacher. So you go to this Sifu, and he reveals that you are a disgraced former student. So you're actually starting off the game as the bad guy, and you just killed like all these martial arts students in the game, which really threw me for a loop initially. I was like, oh, I did not really mean to attack and kill these people. Oops. And so the teacher declares that Yang knows too much and tries to kill him, but Yang strikes him in the chest, which you get to actually fight him, causing Sifu to suffer a fatal heart attack. So while you're searching through Sifu's belongings, Yang confronts a child. In fact, it's your teacher's only child, and orders Fajar to slit the child's throat with his machete. And so at this point, you get to choose whether your character is a male or female, and it doesn't really change the game up except for just certain aesthetics. And so the child is immediately killed. But the child wakes up to find that his or her throat is completely healed due to the power of an ancient talisman that can revive them from death. And you see this talisman glow in the child's hand. However, as a result of the revival, you grow older with each revival. So, as you swear revenge on Yang and his followers, the martial artist, which is you, the protagonist, spends the next 8 years in isolation, training relentlessly and gathering information on the whereabouts of Yang and his cohorts. So overall, a pretty solid and slick game idea, and of course, this is nothing new as far as revenge tropes go, especially for martial arts movies like this. So let's kind of jump into the gameplay, and the gameplay is really sick. As a martial arts game, you learn a multitude of moves that can help take down enemies more quickly, or it can at least buy you some breathing room in large groups of enemies. And these moves are actual martial arts forms as well, and it shows as a dedication to actually learning the craft throughout the game. As you go through each of the game's 5 levels, you will gain experience points from beating up enemies, which you can use to learn new moves. However, you need to purchase the move 5 times in order to permanently learn it. If you go back to a previous level or you get a game over without learning the move 5 times, then you essentially just lose the move. It's an interesting system of trying to learn an effective move for you and making sure that you have it in your repertoire on your next playthrough, or if you need to revisit earlier stages. In each stage, there are 3 dragon shrines that you can visit to invest in skills to. Now, these are going to be different than learning martial arts moves, as your experience points can invest in increasing your focus reserves, weapon proficiency, or resetting your death count, and we'll get into that stuff here shortly. The shrine also has an age category where you can learn skills only before a certain age. These include increasing your structure reserve, increasing health gained on taking down enemies, and increasing your weapon durability. The final shrine category is based on score while in the level that you're actually playing through. It can be used to help gain more structure when avoiding attacks, gaining more focus when avoiding or parrying attacks, or increasing enemy structure damage when you parry attacks. The downside to these shrines is that you can only choose 1 upgrade per visit, so you need to know which one to choose in order to help you out the most through your level that you're playing. And these upgrades also do not carry over into other playthroughs. So if you go back to a previous level or get a game over, then you lose those abilities and just have to start back from scratch. The last element I'll cover for gameplay is your focus and structure meters. Your focus meter is used for specialized combat moves. So the moves that you gain from investing your experience points in them. And these are moves that can trump any enemy move or either disarm them or stun them so that you can continue to use combo moves on them. It'll fill up from parrying and avoiding enemy attacks. The structure meter is really akin to that of Sekiro's structure meter, which I'm going to be making a lot of comparisons between Sifu and Sekiro as well, because they're pretty similar. As an enemy attacks, you have the ability to parry low, medium, or high, and it will cause their meter to rise. And once that meter is high enough, you'll hear a breaking sound, and you can use an instant knockout move. This is an essential mechanic that you need to learn, or else you will not make it far in the game. One of the main mechanics of the game is the death system. We've mentioned that a couple times, from the child reviving himself after he died or she died, and you will die a lot in this game. There's no avoiding. You're going to die several times. You start the game out at age 20, and when you die, your death counter will rise 1. You have the option to revive or quit, but if you revive, your age will increase the number of years based off your death counter. So if you die and have like a 2 on your death counter, it'll rise from like 21 to 23 years of age. Every 10 years, one of the coins on your talisman will break, and you will lose a little bit of health overall, but you'll gain additional strength to defeat enemies more quickly. And it's such an interesting trade-off system that works really well whenever you are in a corner and you're like, okay, maybe I can defeat these enemies more quickly. You can lower your death counter in one of 2 ways. Either spend points at the Dragon Shine and reset it to 0, or you can defeat a certain amount of enemies or bosses and it will lower it by 1. I'm not exactly sure on the mechanic. I'm still trying to figure that out specifically on if it's a certain amount of enemies or certain enemy types. The problem is that if you get in way over your head with a group of enemies or bosses and continue to die, your counter will continue to rise to the point that you can age like 7 or 8 years after each death. And that really, really sucks, because then you will continually lose health as you age. After you reach 70 years old or higher, the last coin on your talisman breaks, and if you die, you will get a game over. There is no coming back from it, so you have to really manage your movesets as well as your health. Another great thing about the detail in this game is that as you age, your character physically appears older. For instance, if you choose the male character, he grows a beard, he gains wrinkles, and his hair grows longer and becomes gray. And I really like that aspect, because as your enemies continue to stay aged, you can just come back looking like an old man and then start to beat up on them. Now, there are only 5 levels in this game, and they are long levels. As you enter a new level, you can return to the previous level at the age you started off the level as. So say, for instance, if you go into stage 2 at the age of 34, you can replay that level at age 34, even if you are a much higher age at a later stage in the game. This also has benefits, as if you beat a level at a younger age, you can move on to the next level at that specific age. However, don't forget that if you don't have a move fully unlocked, you will lose your progress on that move as well as any Dragon Shrine skills you have purchased. So going back to a previous level, you might lose those benefits. In your main area before choosing a level, you have a detective board of sorts of the main 5 bosses of the game, with notes and details for each level. It'll be blank before each level that you start, but as you go through, you can find clues and backstory elements for each of the villains that will be added to the board. What's more is that if you gain access to keys or cards that will allow you to access shortcuts in certain parts of the level, and it makes the level much shorter on replays. And this is something that you will not lose even if you get a game over. It encourages you to recomplete earlier levels so that you can beat them more quickly and finish the stage at a younger age. It's a great mechanic that will save you time once you have some of your essential moves unlocked. Now, as I mentioned before, the game is a love letter to martial arts and the cultural impact it has had. And it takes inspiration from classic Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee movies as well as other films. There's a major homage to the film Old Boy. in the very first level of the game, as the camera goes from a third-person perspective showing your character to a 2D shot of the hallway where you fight a squad of enemies. And once you're done with everything, it'll pan back to a third-person's perspective and show all the enemies you've defeated in that hallway, and then turn right back around to where you need to go. Such a really cool moment, and I absolutely love it. The game also emphasizes mastery through patience, a key value of Kung Fu, which is reflected through the aging system as well, so great attention to detail on these things too. Now, I've gushed on about this game for a while, but I do have some complaints about it as well with certain mechanics and systems in place. The first thing is that the camera for the game is too close on the protagonist. There will be several times where you're focused on an enemy, then out of nowhere another guy just comes up and that you didn't even see at all and punches you in the back of the head, and soon you'll have a hard time recovering and trying to get back on defense. Pretty similar to this issue is that there is no good way to toggle your focus from enemy to enemy, like you might see in A Legend of Zelda or other similar games. You'll see an enemy throwing a high haymaker right towards you, but when you try to parry, you're still focused on the enemy that's in front of you, so you just have to take the punch, and there's nothing you can do about it except try your best to dodge out of the way. Enemies also seem to lock onto you even as you dodge an attack, much like a Dark Souls kind of game. You can time a dodge where you are going to the side or going backwards, but enemies have this uncanny ability where they're still able to reach out and hit you from a distance and stagger you as well. The parrying and structure system is not easy to understand either. I mentioned before that Sekiro Shadows Die Twice has a similar system for sword fighting, where if you parry an attack at just the right time, you can increase their structure meter and perform an instant kill move. Now, there's a trick in that game where if you quickly press the L1 button multiple times to parry, you can more easily time the parry just right, and you can hear this clanging noise from your controller and know that you did it correctly. Sifu doesn't have a sound to know when you did it correctly. You'll see an enemy lose balance and stagger for only a second, and if you don't quickly take advantage of that, then the enemy will quickly regain their defense, and you just kind of have to start over again. Not only that, but your character does not have the same quickness when raising their hands up to guard, so if you don't time it just right, you can take damage and easily start to panic and try to regain composure. Finally, this game is absolutely hard. The first level, I felt like I was doing well and made it out to age 28, which is pretty good, and I felt really good about that. In stage 2, I got a game over and was only 3/4 through the level. The enemy AI can be merciless, especially in groups. There are mid-bosses who have much higher health and structure and can take longer to defeat, and the main bosses have attacks that are far-reaching that you can't dodge them, so you have to know which way to parry or else you lose a decent chunk of health. I've tried looking up tips on how to dodge enemy attacks, and when I try to replicate it, I still get hit every few punches. It can be a rewarding experience when you clear the area, but the learning curve is so high that a lot of people may be turned off after taking death after death. I know I keep comparing Sifu to Sekiro, but I had a similar experience with it. Sekiro is an extremely punishing game as well. If you die twice without reaching an idol or earning an extra life, then you lose any experience gained and you have to go back to your last save point. There were several times where I screamed in frustration and had to take breaks. But my character was so fast that I could dodge attacks or escape certain fights, and I could instantly learn moves or gain tools that would help offset some enemy types as well. And eventually, I beat the game and was able to appreciate the trials that I was put through in order to get to the ending of the game. With Sifu, I still haven't beat the game. I've yelled, cursed, rage quit several times, and it's really broken my spirit. I'm still having trouble making it past the third stage. In fact, I got to the 2 enemies that would have given me an item with direct access to the boss, so I could have just restarted the level and gone immediately to the boss, only to be hit from behind and die. I was going to review this game a few weeks ago, and I felt like I should complete it first before reviewing, but honestly, at this rate, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to finish the game. And it's not like the game is impossible. I mean, I've watched speedruns where players have beat it in less than an hour without even unlocking a fraction of the moves. So I guess I'm the jerk, right? Who just needs to get good instead of complaining about it? It's just frustrating. And just because I can't complete it Doesn't mean I hate this game or can't recommend it. It's such a super stylish game that looks good and is fun when you are executing tight combos. And I think people really should play the game and experience it for themselves. You're going to like some of the levels, like stages 2 and 3 are really cool art styles and places to explore that you're like, oh, I can't wait to revisit this later. So with that being said, should I even rate this game since I haven't beaten it? I don't feel like that's fair. I mean, do I say, this is a really crappy game because I can't beat it, therefore it gets a 0 out of 10? There's a difference between not finishing a game because it's challenging versus not finishing it because it's boring or it's being long and you losing interest in the game. And Sifu is certainly the former and not the latter of this situation. With enough effort, it can be beat and it's fun to play. But dying enough times can really deter you from finishing the game and going on to something else instead. So I'm going to forego the rating this time around. I know that seems a little counterintuitive because this is a video game review show, but I've said what I wanted to say about this game, and I think everyone should try it so they can come to their own conclusions as well. So, have you played Sifu? What did you think of it? Let me know by tweeting me at Cinephile Gamers or joining the Patreon account where we can discuss movies and video games. As always, thanks for joining me, and I can't wait to see you on the next episode. After this game, I'm so ready for Kirby and the Forgotten Lands, that way I can have just a much easier time playing video games.